Hello, my name's I'm a German student at Delaware Valley, and I'm making this video to help out with pronunciation of some of the simple sounds in German. Now, first I have to apologize for the screen that you'll see. I can't do just everything with this video program. But anyway, let's get on to the first letter that people I've seen have trouble with a little bit. This is ah, and it's pronounced that way, always. And it's never said as a or a. So here's a simple example, the word Land. Never land, never as in English. The German a is always pronounced as a in every situation, except, of course, when it has an umlaut, but we'll get to that. So, Land. And also, for this, for the combination of a and u, or I guess a and u in German, it's just au, and it's pronounced the way it appears, which is usually the case in German. You simply will say ah, followed by the u sound, which of course gives you the au sound. So house. Next, this the ah I think most people have, but this is a bigger problem for a lot of people, and I think the German R is probably the hardest sound for people to pronounce. And by the way, I don't have a script or anything, so bear with me. The R is technically called a uvular frictive, which basically means it sounds like which is based on the name. I suppose the sound is coming from your uvula, but I really don't know. That sounds like it would gag you to me, but whatever works. It's German. So let's move on to an example. Rathaus. Rathaus. Now the way you want to get this sound, the way I think will work best for you, is if you first open your throat, just leave it open, and then kind of back your tongue up to tighten the throat a little bit and push air through. And going for that uvular frictive so-called sound. And it should work for you, I think. It's not that hard. It doesn't, if it does gag you, you're doing it wrong. Because it's a language. It was designed to work out well. So, Rathaus. Technically, now that this is important for certain words, and I'll show you that later, technically the R is a rolled R in the throat. Now, normal rolled R is, of course, R at the front of the mouth, with the tip of the tongue behind the upper teeth. But in this case, it's rolled in the throat, which sounds like R. Kind of sounds like gargling, actually. And that is important. You will hear Germans do it sometimes when an R, if it's held out, for example. But it's generally just the sound. But in some cases, I will show you when it's important to be able to roll the throat R to make that distinction. And I think it's pretty easy to get the frictive R sound, but I'm not quite sure with the rolled R. Basically, it feels like bouncing the back of your tongue off the upper part of your throat. And you're going to go for the frictive R, but push your tongue up more and let it bounce. You'll have to try it. I really am not quite sure how to explain it well. So here's another example. Radio. 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 And if you want to roll it, can't always do it right. Radio. Radio. See, you don't need to do the rolled R always. It just helps to be able to do it, which I'll show you with the next example here. Höre. Now, if you hear I rolled the R after the umlauted O, it's important because I've had this word be mistaken by Germans. They don't hear it when I've said der Hörer to them. So it's important to be able to roll the R there, because if you just try to go for the frictive, you may slur it too much to be heard. Like, höre. Well, that actually sounded right. But when you're speaking fast, you'll mess it up. So, you don't have to have a long roll like but go for that sound, go towards that sound, because when you do, it'll come out very definitively, and they'll definitely be able to hear that you're saying, heb den Hörer ab. Pick the receiver up. Heb den Hörer ab. You know, if you give it that roll, it helps it to be understood. Helps to hear that R in there. So that's the German R. I think a lot of people, that's the hardest thing in the language to say correctly, except maybe the umlauted O. I don't know. Probably depends on your perspective. But yeah, basically just the frictive effect in the throat is what you're going for with that. And if you can't manage that, you can roll it at the front of your mouth like Hörer, but you'll sound like you're from Bavaria. That's how they pronounce it in southern Germany. Okay, next example is a word I like for the R at the end of words. When the R is at the end of a word followed or preceded by an E, it's just pronounced like ah. So, for example, the best way to show you is to say it Schwester. Schwester. And technically you could say it like Schwester, but they don't really say that. It won't sound wrong, but it's better to say Schwester. And that does tie into another thing, the word er, he. You want to say the E, and then for the R sound, how can I explain this? It's like you open your throat up from the E position, but keep it tight, sort of. And it ends up closing, I think. Like, kauft das Ball, whatever. Kauft das Buch. Lest ein Buch. So in those cases, when it's an R with an E before it, it's like that. Maybe say it like Schwester, Schwester. It's not exactly the frictive R, like Schwester or something, but it's similar. There's about 3 different ways you can actually pronounce the German R, so you'll have to practice that, and you can write me, of course, and I'll try to help you. The next is and I'm not sure if that's the name of the letter or not. It probably is, but it's an A with an umlaut, as you can see, and it's pronounced as I said, and I want to show you this comparison. It is different from the E, and you can generally just think of it as an sound like we would have, but technically this would go eh. So the E is softer, more mild, I think, less sharp. So I would say, for example, I can't think of any words in it with any good example words, but once again, I don't know if you can hear it, but let's go on to an example. Mädchen. And also please note the CH, which is a sound that you make by putting the tip of your tongue behind the lower front teeth, that ridge there, put the tip of your tongue on the ridge, and then raise the middle of your tongue, I'd say, to what they call the alveolar ridge, which is behind the upper front teeth, and push air through. Mädchen. 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 Das Mädchen. Okay? So there's your example of the and incidentally the CH. I've heard people have some trouble with that word, that's why I thought I'd throw it in there. By the way, I'm in Herr Wyckoff's German 2, so I'm talking from that perspective. The umlauted A, when it's paired with a U, becomes Oi. Welcome to German. That's all I can say. Häuser, Gebäude. And this actually presents an opportunity to talk about the difference when a word ends in an E versus an ER. There is a slight difference. It's very slight, I think. Hard to hear, but Häuser, Gebäude, Häuser. I think there's a difference. You may not hear it. I may even be wrong, but I think there's a difference. Okay, next sound is U, the umlauted U. Now this one is actually easier than it sounds. To pronounce it, roll your lips outward, kind of extremely, as if you were going to say oo, and then say E instead, and you get U, and that's the umlauted U. Pretty simple. So here's the most common word you'll see with the umlauted U, I think, über, über. And this is another one where you could say über, bear, or ba. Über is the way you would normally say it. Über dem Boden hängt ein Bild. I don't know, a picture hangs over the floor. Another couple words, für, and Tür. Für, notice how the R is pronounced. It's kind of just a tightening of the throat. I'll say für, Tür, für, Tür. Für mich, machen Sie bitte dies für mich, and öffnen Sie bitte die Tür. Machen Sie bitte dies für mich. Do this please for me. Öffnen Sie bitte die Tür. Open the door, please. Okay, the next one. Wonderful. The umlauted O. This is another very hard sound for non-natives to pronounce. I'm sure I do it not completely wrong, but like, I'm sure I have an accent with it, and I think it's probably nigh impossible to get without probably going to Germany and listening to it every day, because I swear if you go listen to German songs, you'll hear it pronounced maybe like and if you listen to a German person speak, they'll say Just get the idea and you'll be fine. So here's a word I like, because it means to open in the sense of open a ceremony or something of that sort. I like it because for one thing it sounds pretty cool, and for another you can hear the R and the right next to each other. So I'll pronounce it and then you should try, because it kind of ties in the two hardest sounds in German. Eröffnen, 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 eröffnen. For the this is probably the hardest sound to explain. You want to roll your lips outward, for sure. And the tongue sort of lays flat, but it's puffed up a little. It's pressing against the bottom front teeth. I don't know. It's pressing against your bottom front teeth, and you just sort of shape the sound. Try to just imitate the sound I'm making. Eröffnen, eröffnen, eröffnen. Alright. I hope I'm being of some help. Here's another word that I think is good practice for the R and the Börse means stock market. And interestingly enough, the word Börse without an R means evil. Anyway, Börse, Börse, Börse. You can do that rolling if you want to make sure the R is heard. Like I say, it won't be wrong. Börse, Börse. Or, of course, Börse. If you roll it, you'll sound southern, but it's a lot easier, I guess. Börse. Börse. Sorry, I really like that word. Okay, the next, I hear a lot of people having a problem with the, I believe, now I may just be saying the British version of RZ, but I think the name of it in German is Zed. And it's pronounced TS. Tz. So Zimmer,